For one team, chapters potentially closing on a good note. For another one, there's a chance for not revenge, but at least redemption. That was the story of the Coppa Italia today. Juventus 1-0 over Atalanta in Rome, and joined by our Atalantino friend, Dan from Atalanta, Las Vegas, but not in Las Vegas today, in New York. How's it going, Dan?
Well, another day, another cup final. La Juve, right? It doesn't even matter. The one time that we're actually considered a favorite by the odds makers, we do everything that we're not supposed to do. And there goes another cup.
That's third final. Unfortunately, the last 5 years for Atalanta. So not looking too good. But here on the Calcio Guys, joined by Adriano and Gianni. I forgot to mention that from the top. So a lot to talk about with Atalanta. Obviously, with this Coppa Italia final, Europa League final next week, chance for Champions League qualification, a game that's happening after the rest of the Serie A finishes. It's all over the place for Atalanta this season. But I mean, we'll get right off the bat with the game today. Obviously, Vlahovic scored 4th minute, and then scored again later in the second half. I forget exactly what minute it was, but it was ruled offside, so the game finishes 1-0. What did you make of the game?
Well, kind of like I said, Nick, if there's one thing that that you're not supposed to do against an Allegri Juve team is get scored on early, right? And then you have to deal with that wall of terror. And it's more than just if it wasn't Juve and if it wasn't beating us in a Coppa Italia final again, I would be pretty impressed with the way that went. But you just don't do that. You don't make those mistakes. How are you going to get chances? I mean, it was quite impressive. Actually, it was impressive from Juve. And, we ended up in a situation where we did miss Scamacca. And, we tried to do the same old thing that Atalanta does all the time, cute little combinations at the edge of the box. That might work when there's maybe 4 or 5 people in the box, but not when there's 8. Juve too good, Bremer immense, Vlahovic and Chiesa tough on the counter. We had some chances. But you know what? The honest to goodness truth is we got more than our fair share of chances. Even Maresca was trying to help us out, I think, to be honest, a little bit. Usually that seems to go against us. But yeah, a couple of posts, even, of course, there was a Moretti post as well, but it just wasn't us today. We didn't do anything right, and Juve did everything correct.
I feel like it was we're staying in a one-off type of game, It's like you work so hard to get to where you're supposed to be, and then you just need to keep it up and keep it consistent, and then you try to reinvent the wheel in the final. That's what kind of ends up costing you. But elaborate that further, because you're a lifelong Atalanta fan. To somebody who might not be so well versed with the team, right? What was so off-putting for them today? What did they do that just basically ruined any of their chances? You touched upon it a bit by saying a little bit overcomplicated in the box, but I feel like as if there was a bit more to it too.
Yeah, I think situationally, right. It doesn't help when you have a team that can execute that plan that Juve had to go 1-0. I mean, Juve came out like game break, game buster. That first 5 minutes, even the first 3 minutes prior to the goal, there's some running I haven't seen in some Juve pressing in a while, right? That was quite impressive. I was like, this is going to be a game. And then, Isaac Hien didn't have a great game. Vlahovic was a handful for him. But in that first goal, Jim City just forgot to step up. And so, Vlahovic would have been offside in that case. But I think the big thing, and if I'm talking tactically, right, this year something interesting has happened, and it's what I like to call the redemption of Mario Pasalic as a central midfielder, right? In the past few years, anytime he's had to deputize as a central midfielder, he's given up he's been not great. This year he's actually been fantastic and allowed Kopp miners to push up a little bit further in that trequartista type role, which is not really Town's, he's known for. He's more known for being kind of like a regista type player. But once you start seeing this packed box and this low block that Juve has, you see that all of a sudden, we're crossing the ball, we're getting it out wide because that's the only place where there's room that Juve is allowing us to have room. and you have 10 Koopmeiners in the box with his back towards the goal, coming for a ball, maybe sweeping around, trying to get a shot, going through 4 guys, always blocked by Bremer, same thing with Lookman. And you have Mario Pasalic in the back trying to pick out passes. I mean, he can be pretty decent, but you got to switch those roles up. Mario Pasalic is an excellent header of the ball. He's in the box sometimes. He makes these runs. So I think Gasparini got that wrong. I think the change was a little bit too late. But yeah, and Scamacca not having a point of reference, that was a little bit. Scamacca's been on fire, right? And he gets a silly yellow card and let's not even talk about how dumb it is that people, because, on the other side, it was, what's his face, Locatelli, that missed the final for accumulation of yellow cards. It seems really, really odd that would happen in a final. But it was trying the same thing over and over again. We saw in the second half when El Bilal Toure came in a little bit better. And then when Pasalic came off and Moranchuk came on, and you saw 10 Koopmeiners kind of move into that more regista role where he could kind of spray the ball with his talent. He does that. We saw a few more chances, but ultimately it fell to Ademola Lookman to try and create something out of nothing. It just wasn't there for us today. De Ketelaere was a ghost in the first half. Just no space. There was no space for us to maneuver. The old Atalanta actually, I think, might have done a little bit better in this situation. Guys like Gomez and Ilicic and even Zapata can do really well. But we need space now. We have pace. And so we were on the front foot. We had, of course, all the possession. And Juve, even making some mistakes, there were 8 guys behind the ball after a turnover to be able to make sure that it was taken care of. So I think we were really up against it once that first goal went in. And like I said, Juve was always a constant threat on the counter and just solid in the back. We had trying to do the same thing. We had no answer for it, to be honest with you.
No, that's well said. I think you kind of saw it. I mean, I don't know if you want to say Atalanta, Juve won it and Atalanta, played not to lose. I don't know what it was, but it just seemed like two different engines going at the same time. Like, you're playing the same game, but it was like two different, mindsets. I don't know what it is, but, for you, Dan, you've seen Atalanta, like Nick said at the top of the show, in 3 finals, Coppa Italia finals in about 3 years, and about 5 years, sorry. What is it going to take for Gasparini to finally get over the hump with this Atalanta side? This is a manager that, we don't see this in Italy very often, but he's been with Atalanta, and correct me if I'm wrong, about 8 seasons now. And, something that we don't usually see in Italy, having a coach have a tenure like that for those many years. We know Allegri is the master of the one-off game, getting his players ready to go. And like you said at the top of the show, Dan, Atalanta even coming into this as the quote-unquote favorite over Juventus that has been playing terribly in these last, I think, 10 to 15 matches, and Atalanta probably the opposite. Is it just Gasparini? He's had the teams, he's had the individual talents. What do you think it's going to take for him to finally get over that hump and, stop being the bridesmaid and maybe be the bride one of these finals?
I don't know the answer to that question, Adriano. I'll be honest with you. Like, this is Atalanta 4.0 now under Gasp. I mean, when you look at this starting 11 that we had today versus the 1 in 20 3 years ago against Juve, we only had one same starter, and that was Martin de Roon, and who I'm actually the most worried about is him limping off injured. So hopefully he's okay, because he's our captain because Toloi hardly ever plays. He did play today, but he is Mr. Atalanta. So that was a kind of a shock. You don't see Martin de Roon injured very often, and when he's crying like that, that something is definitely wrong. But I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know why I can speculate. We have a group of players who, at this level, because we are Atalanta and we're not buying experienced stars, maybe, and Gasparini even, he had a hot minute with Inter, but he's not a coach that has coached. He's not he's not an Allegri. He's not a Conte. Nobody on the team, as good as they are, have the type of experience to do this. That's the only thing I can say. Then again, you have Juve with a lot of young guys who are out there. I don't know what it is, but I'm a little bit at a loss. I really thought that we had an opportunity here. The one against Lazio, I think that first one was a little stolen from us. The one against Juve a few years back at the Mapei Stadium, I felt like we got beat. And this time we got beat again. And I honestly am at a loss. I don't know what it's going to take because I don't know what's wrong other than maybe speculating is that we don't have that type of experience of winning within the team. So we need to win something and we need to be able to keep this core together for a bit, which I don't think is going to be really possible. As good as we are at replacing them, we can't replace them with experienced people who are used to winning at this level. Our only guy who has played at this level was injured on the bench, and that was Seo Kolasinac. So if you think about it, very few, if any, have been winning at this level at Atalanta, even our best players.
Like, I feel like you touched upon it very well, like, especially with the Atalanta 4.0 statement, because Gasperini has been there for a good amount of time. And I feel like, just from an outsider's perspective, you know, like perspective, not perspective. Wow. Outsider's perspective. It just seemed to, like, every time a player left, he'd managed to slot somebody in there and they still function very well. And he just has, like, I know you, like you said it perfectly, you get players that don't have winning experience. He just, you know, like, not to like let I'm paraphrasing, but, you know, like, you're getting these diamonds in the rough type of thing, but they end up being diamonds for Atalanta, you know, like, it's do you think do you think maybe, you know, the time has come and gone for Gasperini, or do you feel like as if, look, given like the team's financials or, you know, the team's realistic positioning and, you know, upper middle tier type of club in Italy, like, because he's consistently been getting the team into like a competitive spot year in and year out, you know, whether it's Europa, whether it's Champions League, you know, and like even in Champions League, you get fantastic results sometimes, you know. It's like when do you like, does it really necessitate a change, you know, like, or is it something that, well, he needs a bit more support, like in your own opinion, where does the biggest change need to come from? Coaching side, management side, you know, like, because the players you can only use the players that you have, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think it's anything on the players fundamentally. Like, they buy into his system and they find success with it, you know. Like, you brought up the Catalera before, like the Catalera in Milan was not the Catalera at Atalanta, you know. A lot of people are gonna say, like, okay, maybe it's the year of like playing in the league, but maybe it's because I thought maybe for Milan, Pioli's system was not for him, you know. Like, that's just a small example that I'm giving, like. But essentially, that comes down to my point. Where do you think the biggest amount of difference needs to come from in order for Atalanta to get over that hump of, you know, not like get over the hump, that barrier of like winning something, whether it be a Coppa Italia, you know, a Super Coppa, or even like, you know, getting into a very significant spot in a European competition, no matter what tier it is? Where does the difference have to be?
I think the difference has to be less change, more than more. If you look at some of, obviously, this Atalanta team has been up and down this season, but you can't lie with the results. You know, Coppa Italia final, Europa League final, 3 points away from qualifying for Champions League. Got pretty much single-handedly, well, together with Fiorentina, got Italy the 5th Champions League spot, right? So you can't say this wasn't a successful season.
Wow, the disrespect to Roma. That's
yeah.
Ouch.
Exactly. Right. No, I mean, we've lost some games that we definitely should have won, you know, and we should be higher in the table. But, you know, competing on all three fronts. Look, this, like you mentioned, Roma, and at the weekend, that match was peak Atalanta, and of course Roma was tired. But
but it was like very like, yeah, no, I'm not even mad about the loss.
Yeah.
That's just,
yeah,
they got.
But what happened, Johnny, in that game, right? First of all, we have played just as many games as Roma, right? Pretty much. And when have you seen an Atalanta team and even a Gasperini team be able to rotate and have a deeper squad than somebody like Roma, than a team like Roma, right? Like, that's, to me, that's big.
True.
And then we should be up 6-0 at halftime, pretty much, or at least in the first 60 minutes. Soft penalty, right? Well, we get it called against us on the weekend, and then we luck out today, but it doesn't help us any, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, 2-1 in a game that we should have blown Roma out of the water, and now we're nervous in the last 20 minutes. You know, I mean, I know they don't understand what they're doing to people like me who have high blood pressure. Like, why is Atalanta like this? You know, why aren't they finishing their chances? And why does a game where we really should have blown away the competition all of a sudden nervy in the last 20 minutes? So there is some mentality there. But the biggest thing is that you look at guys like Ederson. You look at guys like Isaac Hien, who came in January. You look at Charles de Ketelaere. These are players who, in the beginning of their time with Atalanta, it took them a while to get in place, right? When we got Isaac Hien in January from Hellas Verona, we felt like he was the center back we always needed. Gasperini didn't play him for like 5-6 games and then started doing spot things. The problem with Gasperini, I don't know if it's a problem, but the truth of the matter with Gasperini is players have said it. It takes 6 months to a year to figure out how to play under Gasp and to make him happy. If you survive that, then you're good. But then when we're constantly cycling these players out, right? And I'm not talking about we have the staples, we have the Derunes and the Tolois, but Toloi has barely played this year. Derun is getting older, right? He's the only one left in the starting 11 from 3 years ago in that Coppa Italia final. So we need to establish a new base, right? Scamacca started off a little bit slowly too, and now he's coming into form. So if we get into the Champions League, if we keep the same core of people, we have to be able to have that together. If Ademola Lookman stays, if El Bilal Toure becomes what we think he can be. So I've always said the best change for Atalanta is less change. But somebody comes knocking and they say, 10 Cup miners, we'll give you 65 million for him. What are we going to do? Say
cha-ching,
no to that?
Cha-ching.
Buy 3 more players, right? Remember, we sold Højlund to Manchester United, and we got Scamacca, Toure, and De Ketelaere.
Yeah,
pretty much for the price of that. So it's a difficult situation to be in, to be the queen of the province. We're still a provincial team. We have a modest budget still comparatively, right? And we make money, but it's only because we're smart. So I think at some point we need to have consistency. We've had it with Gasperini, but we need it with the players. I think that would be my biggest thing. And I think winning one trophy would do a lot for the team.
Agreed.
Back to today's game, actually, I was just looking at the stats. So Atalanta had 66 possession, 56 of which was in the attacking half. You look on the other side, Juve 34% possession, 69 of which was in their defensive half. So this is typical Allegri ball, play defensive, which in a way I kind of disagree with myself there, because Juve did have a few chances. They had that disallowed goal. Whatever, I digress. But another stat that stuck out was Atalanta 13 attempts, 0 on target, according to the official stat sheet, which I'm kind of confused because it does say Perin made a save. So if they had 0 shots on target, how did he make a save? Where did that save come from? I do remember there was a corner in which he had to corral it. I don't know if that was considered the save, but whatever. 0 official shots on target. When I tell you that, what do you think?
Yeah, Bremer needs to change his last name to Dyson because he was sucking up all the balls back there. You saw what was happening. All we were doing was shooting from the outside, and it was getting blocked. You can't shoot through a bunch of guys, and you got Bremer back there. Come on, he's a beast. I think I tweeted that the 2 best players on the pitch in this game were Bremer and Ederson, and neither of them were chosen for the Brazilian national team, which I think is just especially Bremer. Come on, Bremer. Ederson's new to the, and I also said that because I didn't want to talk about Vlahovic. I just, it says it all, right? Everything was blocked. And, you can, if you read the time, right, you see, Vlahovic scored in the 4th minute. Atalanta had all the possession in Juve's half, in their attacking half, right? And they had 13 shots and 0 on goal, you know exactly what's happening. Nobody is surprised, honestly, this happened. What I'm surprised at is that we allowed it to happen, which so it's like, and we just kept on, like I said, we just kept on trying to do the same thing over and over again, trying little combinations within the box. But you see that there's 7 players inside the box and there's 3 Atalanta players in the box if we're lucky, right? We don't have Gianluca Scamacca in the middle to cross to. So you're not going to win when you got those trees of a back 3 that they have back there with Bremer and Gatti and Delino. Like you're not going to score. And then when we had our chances, Miranchuk skies it, right? And Lookman hits the post. Lookman is the master of getting deflected goals, and it barely missed Perrin's goal. That was just a shade. So it's football is football, right? This is the way it bounces. But at the end of the Roma match, it felt like there was a force field around Sevillar's goal. You saw how many shots we took, how many opportunities we had. We could just, even Koop Miners, open goal, shot it over, right? It felt like that was actually continuing today, with the exception of, not only was it that, but we had that low block in front of us. We've never been good at breaking down the low block, and that's the toughest low block to defend in all of Italy, maybe in all of Europe, is when Juve gets it right. Juve really gets it right, and they got it right today.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think one thing I wanted to touch upon before maybe we move on, but you kind of mentioned it before, Dan. I agree with you. The accumulation of yellow cards, to not see some of these players play in the final. I know it's always been a thing, but like it sucks. I would have liked to have seen Scamacca on this stage ahead of the Euros potentially. It would have been his first final as well, as a young player. Locatelli on the other side as well. You kind of just want the best 11s on the pitch, right?
Sure.
For both sides. That's kind of how I just see that. So I wanted to add to that point that you made earlier, but yeah, and I don't know. It just, for me, it's a shame, but it's kind of a fun question to ask you. But do you put anything in? And I don't know how superstitious you are, Dan. And if you've told us before, I forget. Sorry, so forgive me for that. But in sports, touching the trophy before it's yours is always a sin, right? You're not supposed to touch the trophy. If it's in hockey, if it's in the NFL, if it's whatever, don't touch the trophy. And some people like it to touch it, some people don't. Everybody does how they feel. Do you put anything in to Gasperini and Scamacca touching the trophy in the press conferences pre Coppa Italia final, or is that just nor here nor there? Like, what do you make of all that? Kind of a fun one for you.
Well, I do now. Because
don't touch it.
I think it's funny. I wouldn't do it out of superstition, but more out of respect. If it was just me, if I was in front of the Stanley Cup, the Coppa Italia, whatever, all those ones, I ain't touching that until it's mine. So I saw how Gasperini did it, and he was definitely playing at the fact of the superstitions. And when I saw that, I was like, whatever, like either we win or we lose. Now, I'm not a superstitious person at all, but don't tempt fate, Gasp and Scamacca. Like, come on. Like, and it was just, it was a very Gasp thing to do, right? The way that he did it. And I was like, oh, here we go. We go. I mean, I love the man, but like, it was really, really funny to see him not being the one going completely mad on the sidelines. Nick, I think that was one of my favorite moments. I made a comment that if Gasp that was the one that was taking off his clothes, we all would have had a harder time with that. But at least it was Allegri who was doing that. But the best was Cambiaso on the sideline, like getting super excited that that Max was going crazy. To me, that was absolutely hilarious. But I think both coaches had a right in this game to complain about Maresca's officiating a little bit. He was letting it go a little bit too much. Right, I think.
Yeah, he lost, especially at the end. He lost control. You could just tell, like, both sides were frustrated. I was surprised Gasp remained calm. Like, okay, I know Allegri has this thing. You've seen videos in the past of him throwing off the jacket, and that's what he did today. But to continue
tie.
undressing, that was
The
hilarious.
tie, the button of the shirt. He was doing his typical Allegri striptease. It was amazing.
That was hard. He just like I don't know how official it is of him leaving. Apparently, he said it in his press conference today. But it seems like he just wants to go out with a bang. He got the red card. He got the trophy. But yeah, so that was funny. But one thing I did want to ask, we're talking about Scamacca not playing, and one thing I saw on social media today is people saying, "Oh, I bet Atalanta, but I forgot Scamacca wasn't playing." How much of a difference do you think he would have made if he did play?
I think he would have made a difference. I think, the guys who we had up front, so I'm gonna say two different things, right? I don't think that game was going to be in any attacker that we had like wheelhouse. It's very crowded. There's a lack of space. Nobody can really run. So, but to have another big body centrally, especially in that second half when we were doing everything that we could to swing in crosses, and Gianluca Scamacca is tall. He's 6'5", and he's quite good in the air. He scored a couple of headed goals this year, but when you have Ademola Lookman, El Bilal Toure in there in the second half, who they can jump high, but they're not big-bodied people going up against Gatti and Danilo. We needed another big body. So whether or not that, he definitely couldn't have done anything for us getting scored on in the fourth minute, but I think it would have created a lot more havoc. And there were a couple of times, and I'm thinking that chance that Catalare had in the first half where he was able to get by Danilo, I believe, and he kind of just struck the ball with the outside of his foot and it kind of skied a little bit. Scamacca gets chances like that. When Scamacca gets in a position, he scores, right? Yeah. The magic for Scamacca, if he can get this right, is how to get in the right position. If he ever gets in the right position, the ball is at his feet, he scores. And so I think that we would have been able to capitalize a little bit. But yeah, I think he would have made a difference in this match, especially in the second half. Somebody who was a little bit more of an aerial threat. I mean, you saw at the very end of the game. I mean, it was the end of the game, but even 10 minutes to go in the game, you saw Scalvini playing center forward because we needed some height in the box, right? We just didn't have it. And then boom, counterattack, heart attack. You know how it is. But he would have made a difference. I mean, he's an informed striker. He's a big body. I think that's what the game needed. It wasn't even about tactics. It wasn't about, it was at this point, it's just get some bodies into the box because they've got 8 guys in there. And, we're putting in crosses. And if we do it to the near post, it gets headed out. If we do it in the middle, it gets headed out. If we go to the far post, Zappacosta or Hatibor whiff on it. So we need somebody who can challenge in the middle and maybe get a garbage goal, right? That was the other thing. They were clearing it out and maybe we'd get it out to our, to the top of the box. We'd cycle it back in and kept doing the same thing over and over and over again. For 86 minutes, we did the same thing over and over and over again. Scamacca would have helped, I believe.
Even just as like a reference point, just to have, because like you said, crossing in the ball to pretty much nobody. They pretty much gave the ball away every time they crossed it. Ruggeri on the sides, Lukman, you mentioned Zappacosta and others, but I think it was frustrating. And one more thing I wanted to actually now ask you, now that you brought this up, Dan, 4 minutes in, you guys get scored on. Do you think whatever game plan Atalanta had coming into this final, went out the window after getting scored on so early? Because like we all know, obviously, the low block, Allegri's low block is really hard to beat, but there was time to still do something. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Do you think, everything went out the window once you guys got scored on early, or they were still intact, going forward?
No, I think that there was a plan for that, because that happens, right? The problem is the plan that we had for it didn't work. And I think the real miss for me, and like I know better than Gasperini, but just in my opinion, it was keeping Pasalic in the midfield, right? Obviously, you can't make a change 4 minutes into the game unless it's injury, right? So I
Yeah.
really think that switching Cope Miners into the center, and to be honest with you, because we have Kolasinac out, right? You know, and Darun is playing at center back.
Center back,
And
yeah.
I think that we've done really, really well. We have a more attacking game with Pasalic in the middle, and that with Ederson, you know, De Bruyne there at center back. Sometimes he pushes up into the midfield, but I think we could have used De Bruyne in the middle of the pitch in this game. So some sort of change earlier than when all the changes happened. I also think that El Bilal Touré was fantastic when he came in for a young striker, but you know, we were going back and forth with some different Atalantini on Twitter, and they're like, you know, El Bilal Touré should come in. And I'm like, I've never seen him play in a game like this. He's a young kid. All I've ever seen is, you know, he comes in 15 minutes, pretty much. He played one game. He started one game, but normally his forte is we're up 1-0 or 2-0, and he comes in and he scores a goal because there's so much space. That's what he does. He's fast. He's good. I was impressed with how he was able to hold up the ball a little bit, but doesn't hold up the ball like Scamacca does. And part of the problem is he came on for De Ketelaere. And De Ketelaere wasn't playing well. So he definitely should have come off. But we need a guy like De Ketelaere in a game like this. Sometimes even if they're complete ghosts for an entire game, they make one play and they can solve everything. So I was a little disappointed that De Ketelaere came off, because I think you need guys who have some tricks up their sleeves, maybe a one moment of brilliance. To beat Juve when you're down to them, you either have to make a mistake in a really vulnerable area, or you have to have a player that can produce miracles. And as bad as De Ketelaere was, taking him out at halftime and putting in a young guy, I don't know about that call, to be honest.
Who would you have taken off for Touré if you would have chosen?
Well, my halftime changes as I would have actually taken Pasalic off, and I would have brought Miranchuk. I would have brought Miranchuk in, because Miranchuk is famous for being good in tight spaces. I was actually surprised that Touré came on instead of Miranchuk. There was a really interesting thing that happened at the end of the Roma game. Was we saw Gasperini when we were only up 2-1, and there was a chance that Roma was going to peg us back, right? He was talking to Rafa Toloi like he was going to get ready to go in. And then all of a sudden, he goes to Miranchuk and brings Miranchuk in. And I was like, we're defending a lead, and he's bringing in an attacking midfielder. But that substitution actually changed everything. The pressure was off because we were putting pressure on them. And so I was just surprised that a guy who's known for being good in tight spaces like Miranchuk wasn't the first one to go on. So just some of my thoughts, but I think Pasalic really had an egg there, and Cope Miners needs to have the ball at his feet, facing the goal and looking at all his teammates. That's in the games like this. That's where we need him. He needs to be controlling it, because the ball was at Ademola Lookman's feet too often. And when Ademola Lookman, I'm wearing his jersey, I love him, but when he has the ball at his feet, it stays at his feet.